You're listening to Working Through It, a storytime podcast with a mental health lens. Hello and welcome back to the Working Through It podcast. My name is Sierra and I'm your host. I'm so glad to have you back. This week we're doing Therapist Reacts to trying out a specific type of therapy. Therapist Reacts basically is where I try out different things. And I wanted to start trying out different types of therapy because I realized that there are a lot of therapies out there and it can be really overwhelming and sometimes not even knowing where to start. So I had the opportunity this week to try out art therapy with Laney Wallace, who is a certified art therapist. It was my first time ever doing art therapy and I really enjoyed it. And if you stay tuned to the end, you'll see the end result and kind of how it really played out. But I ask all the questions so that you don't have to, and to figure out if art therapy is the type of therapy for everyone or just people who are in art. And the answer was pretty surprising. Let's get into it. So I'm so excited because I'm finally sitting here with Laney. Laney is actually we met in a cohort for training and coaching on growing our practices, but I'm really excited because she is the owner of the Alchemy Creative Arts Therapy. And I really am honored to have you on the show. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited. This is going to be fun.
Yes. Okay, so I know that today we're focusing in on art therapy, but I know that there's more to what it is that you do. So before we get into art therapy, tell us just a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Laney. Nice to be here with you today. I am an art therapist. I'm also an EMDR therapist. I am licensed in the state of New York. That is where my practice is in New York City, but I can see clients all over New York State. Primarily come from a background, I was doing medical art therapy for the first 10 years of my career. And more recently, about 8 months ago, went full-time into private practice. So medical art therapy in a medical setting, in a hospital, in an inpatient setting looks a little bit different than private practice art therapy. But it's still, really helpful, really cool. A lot of my clients love the ability to be expressive in therapy. And kind of one of my big shticks with my work is that the therapy that I do is more than just talking. Bringing in elements of art therapy, bringing in EMDR therapy if it's a good candidate for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of my short spiel about myself.
So that's a great therapeutic approach, and it's so unique because I can see that being so beneficial to anybody who's artistic or in general, even somebody who isn't as artistic but has a hard time articulating how they feel. This might be a really great way to kind of get them to open up. So I'm excited to try out art therapy because I haven't before. Tell me a little bit about what art therapy is.
Sure. So art therapy is a form of psychotherapy where the participant, the client, uses art making as a form of expression, of emotional exploration, another way to kind of reach those therapeutic goals that you might be working on in a therapy session. So I think a good way to explain it is sometimes we just don't have the words to share how we're feeling about something, or maybe it's really painful to talk about these things that we've been through, right? Like I know you do trauma therapy a lot, primarily, and I think that there are so many pieces of trauma and difficult situations that we go through that we simply just don't have the words to describe how they made us feel, or words alone just can't really encompass that experience.
Right.
So art making is another way to do that. It accesses a different part of our brain than just talking about something alone does. So it uses both right and left brain to, like I said before, reach those therapeutic goals. And also it can be really fun, and it can be really intimidating to just sit and talk about something. So it's especially I work with adults, but it can be an especially important therapeutic approach to use with children, with teens who being with a therapist, working with a therapist might seem really intimidating, but making art seems less intimidating. And it's a way to kind of create that safe container, allow a client to open up in a new way.
It does cover it. And it sounds really cool. I'm actually very excited. So I know when we talked, I was like, what supplies do I need? One, let me make a disclaimer. And I guess this would also be a question. So the disclaimer is I am not artistic in any sense of the word. I don't have patient hands. I'm good at making things, but like doing little crafts with my hands, small things, is very challenging for me because I just feel like I don't have that gift. Does somebody have to be artistic to do art therapy?
Absolutely not. I always tell people you don't have to even have picked up a paintbrush to do art therapy. It's not, and this is something, if you've ever worked with an art therapist, you've probably heard them say, I've said it a million times in my career, it's about the process and not the product. So it's not about making a beautiful piece of artwork or having something that at the end you want to frame it or like take it home with you. It's about the process of working with the art materials, what they bring out, what kind of comes up in the artwork. And there's so many different art materials that you can use with an art therapist, right? It's not just painting and drawing. It can be collage. That's a really safe way to enter into art therapy, right? Cutting out pictures from magazines,
Right.
found objects, right? Like using clay, using Play-Doh for kiddos, using what is it? Model Magic is like a really fun way if you can't get your hands on clay. And there's just so many ways to use art therapy. It can be digital art. There's so many different things. So all that to say, you definitely don't need to be an artist. You don't need to have any artistic skill. An art therapist is going to meet you where you're at and work with you to kind of express yourself at your comfort level. So I think it's a really great question, but no, you do not need to be an artist to do art therapy.
Thank God, because I was confused. So I'm glad to hear it. What is the difference for somebody who's doing it online and wanting to connect with you and start? Do they have to have like all these art supplies, or what's the best way for somebody to get started and connect with an art therapist?
Yeah, definitely not. So I have some clients that come to me that they're artists themselves. So they do have art supplies because they're making art on their own time as either a hobby or a passion, or some people like their job. But oftentimes I'll just to clients be like, do you have like a pen and a paper near? Do you have markers? Do you have anything? So a lot of the times with virtual, when I was working back in person with people in an office, I would like bring a little tote with art supplies. But now that I'm fully virtual, I'm just like, do you have anything around you? And oftentimes people can get their hands on, even if it's a sticky note and like a post-it note and like a pencil. It You don't have to have like these high quality art materials to participate. And yeah, I mean, especially even virtually, there's a lot of apps that you can use. There's a lot of websites that you can use. So it definitely doesn't need to be a barrier. But I think a lot of times what can happen too is if people really like it, maybe they'll go and buy like a $5 pack of, colored pencils and a sketchbook from Walgreens. It doesn't have to be a very serious endeavor. You don't have to spend a lot of money to do it.
That makes total sense, and I'm glad to hear it because I don't have
Mm-hmm.
supplies. What I have with my
All good.
today, construction paper.
I love it.
Get some watercolor markers, brush pens.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, okay, and a coloring book, and then I have paper.
Perfect.
I'm excited.
Good. Well, I hope this is enjoyable for you today, and then you can, take this with you and keep using all the goodies that you bought going
Perfect.
forward.
Yes.
Yeah, it is
Okay.
fun. That's another great part of it too. It can be really fun.
Yeah. Oh, I'm really looking forward to it. Okay. So you're in control. I am now just getting therapy from you, however you want. You lead the way. I'm excited.
Okay, great. So one thing that I didn't mention before, and this is not necessary for people to know, but I think as you and I are like dialoguing about this, I think it's another important piece too when you think about art materials. And if anyone listening wants to kind of try therapeutic art making on their own, or like using art when you journal, things like that. There's different things that can be elicited, different emotions, experiences that can be elicited through different types of art materials. So if you think about a pencil or a colored pencil, that's going to be very controlled. You're going to have a lot of control over that, or like a fine tip marker. And then if you think on the other end of the spectrum, like going from like paint, watercolor, that's going to be more fluid. That generally elicits like a more emotional experience. And then you have all the way at the end, like, more like finger paint or clay. It might be, depending what you're trying to process or going through, like you might want to check in with yourself. Do I need more control? Do I want to have like a more emotional experience? I personally love using watercolors, but it just depends what you're comfortable with, what feels safe for you. So I think when you kind of break it down that way, it's pretty intuitive, right? Like you're going to have less control over watercolor than you're going to have over a colored pencil or a pencil or whatever.
Okay, because I have watercolor with me and I had never used it before. Those markers were driving me nuts because I couldn't control the lines that I was trying to make, and it was bleeding into other lines. And it was getting agitated than anything. And then it felt like a challenge I wanted to try and control and make it I will, which now
and that might be a lesson in like release and letting go of the idea of control and all of that. Okay, so I think you have some paper with you. So what I'm gonna have you do is fold it into thirds if you can. Let me see if I have a piece of paper and we can do it together. So I have a little paper here. So like, don't mind my notes here. Hopefully you can't see them. So like fold it into thirds, right? It doesn't have to be perfect in, inches across, but just as long as you have 3 sections, okay? And so I want you to then, what we want it to do at the end is like all be on the same side. So maybe you want to take that first part, the first left side of the page, the left panel, and just fold the other 2 behind it. So you kind of like an accordion. So you're only looking at that front one, right? So it'd be kind of like this. Okay. So we're going to start with that one.
Okay.
And so you can take, I think we have plenty of time for this, but I want you to think about this first one being the past. So I don't know that we talked about, Sarah, like a theme or anything that you want to do.
Yeah.
But I'll give a couple prompts and you can take what you want. So maybe you want to think about a certain theme in your life or a certain like thing that you're going through or an aspect of yourself. Okay. And we're going to have this side be the past. So maybe what it felt like in the past, what it looked like in the past, maybe something you were going through. You don't have to share with me right now. You can just come up with your own, like, okay, maybe I'll think about this goal that I'm working on right now in my life or like this struggle I'm having. So we're going to do the past first. And then just so you have an idea what's going to happen, then we're going to turn it and fold, and we're going to do the present. And then we're going to turn it and fold and do the future. So past, present, future.
Okay.
So I think we'll do it like one at a time, right? So with the past, you can start and just use whatever materials you have at your disposal. And what I always say to clients is you can use anything that you want to kind of make imagery about the past. And you can do shapes, you can do patterns, you can do colors, you can add in words, pictures, whatever you want for your past panel.
In my past panel, okay.
Was that enough structure? Does that feel okay for you? Okay.
It can be shapes, it can be
anything that comes out, patterns, colors, textures, words, anything at all.
Let me think what I want to put on here. I'm going to, I think, try and record this, but I don't think I can. Okay. I'll just show my finished product. I'm going to put that there. Okay. So, shapes and anything that comes to mind from my past. I feel like I want to do a structured one, mostly because watercolors wasn't fun. I want to try. Okay. So as far as shapes and things, should I be telling you?
No, you can work on your own.
Okay.
Take a few minutes if you want. You know, usually something I'll say to clients is like, okay, I'm gonna look at the clock and let's take a full 5 minutes, right? And maybe like a reason I would do that is because sometimes they'll write a few things down and be like, okay, I'm done. And I'm like, no, I really want you to kind of like go through this, take a full 5 minutes to really express whatever needs to be expressed onto the paper, get it out of your head onto the paper.
Okay. So, I'm so not artistic, but I'm gonna do my best.
And maybe you want to think about like, are there certain colors that come up for me when I think of the past or the present or the future? Right? Like different colors remind people of different things, of different emotions. Right? We associate like red with anger or danger. We associate yellow with like happiness. But it's all subjective, right? Because some people might find red to be, you know, symbolic of love or some other emotion that I didn't mention.
Thankfully, I do have a lot of colored pens, so that's what we're using right now.
Yeah, perfect.
For me, it feels like it's a lot of words than just a couple pictures.
That's quite all right.
Okay. I think I got it. Is that too short?
Okay. No, it's good. And then, so what I'll have you do next, and we can look at it together at the end if you want. So, right, we just did the present. Yeah. So then I want you to fold both back so that you're only looking at the middle panel.
Okay.
And then you can do, oops, like losing it. And then you can do the present. So maybe that's how you're currently feeling, what you're currently experiencing, what's currently going on in your life. And again, same thing. You can use symbols, shapes, patterns, colors, anything at all, words that come up.
Present. Okay.
You could even write if you want to. You don't have to. You could write past, present, future. Yeah. Or maybe it's like, you know, if I was talking about a certain topic or situation with a client, right? Like maybe talking about, okay, graduation, right? A lot of people are graduating from school right now or college. So maybe it's like, well, past might be like, you know, senior year version of Sierra or whatever, you know, and then maybe present would be like how I'm feeling right now about like graduating and not knowing what's next. If I'm a new college grad and I have to apply for jobs, or maybe it's like the fear of going to college or whatever. Right. So see how this could kind of like come into play with a certain topic.
Yeah. I feel like this is at a perfect time just because right now for me, I'm working on a new business venture, which is it's like a huge dream of mine, but there's a lot of like self-doubt and just anxiety around it. So it's actually
for sure.
It's a good prompt for me.
Do you do EMDR too or no?
I do. Yeah.
Okay. So, right. It's like the 3-pronged approach of like past, present, future template. Yeah. You could think of it in that way too.
It's such a cathartic way to do it because it feels like, even though like with EMDR, I love that EMDR can do the work without us having to talk. It's also nice to kind of externally express it in a way that's not me having to unpack all of the things that come alongside.
Yeah. Right. It's, you know, if I don't know if you're a journaler, I'm sure like whoever ends up listening or our clients we probably have some journalers, right? It's kind of that same idea of getting it like out of your head onto paper. kind of the act of writing is really important for me, like the act of like physically making something with my hands, right? Which is why a lot of times I'm like a sticky note type of gal. Like I like to have a physical, tangible to-do list where I'm writing things down. It just feels more potent in my mind.
That's true. And I definitely feel like I have to write things down. I'm definitely a list person for sure. I have
Mm-hmm.
a list. And then knowing how to like, I guess I've never really put together the two, like the
Mm-hmm.
aspect and then being a person that has to have something written down. But I could see the relationship
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, totally.
Breaking into these, which already I hate it. I already messed up. I'm like annoyed, but I'm trying.
Mm-hmm. Right. And that can be something to process too with an art therapist, right? Like, what does it feel like to like take in that mistake?
Annoying.
Yeah.
Because I want it to look nice and it doesn't. But I
Uh-huh.
feel like that's okay because it's a new, I'm trying to like meet myself where I'm at. Do you
Yeah.
find with your clients that are trying this out that they struggle a lot with feeling like that? And maybe that's just me with like my perfectionism tendencies, but like
Right.
I'm a recovering perfectionist. So I have to make those conscious efforts to like really let things go.
Mm-hmm.
You
Right.
have
Well, this is a new layer of that for you then.
It is. I had a
Yeah.
really great therapist on the show, Monica Denise, and she works on perfectionism for professionals and things like that. And one of the things
Mm-hmm.
we talked about was the issue of perfectionism in general. But this feels like a tangible like activity for me to practice letting that go, which
Yeah.
is new, but a
Yeah.
good
Yeah.
thing, I think.
And we'll
Okay.
talk when we finish up about like what happens with what we've just created. Like, what do you do with it? Like, that can be a big part of the process for people is like, okay, so now I have this like tangible piece of my inner world.
Yeah.
How do I want to care for it? Do I want to hang on to it? Do I want to discard it? Do I want to keep it safe somewhere? Um, that can be a big part of it too, right? Think of in terms of like using art therapy for a trauma experience, right? Maybe we have this visual representation, you know, maybe not of the trauma, right? Like that's probably not what a lot of art therapists are necessarily doing. Like we're not saying draw out your trauma experience or like draw out this experience that happened to you, but maybe like what was that experience? How did it feel in your body? Or, you know, it might come out in some way, shape, or form. And so, like, how do we want to manage that when we're done? Do we need to keep this safe? Is it something that we want to let go of, get rid of? I've had clients who I've talked about ways like, um, you know, recently I had a client that we decided she was going to rip it into tiny little pieces of paper and like soak it in water and then like flush it down the toilet
Oh, letting
to get
that
rid
go.
of it.
Yeah. Instead of like the container that we use like in EMDR sometimes, where it's like
Hmm.
place that thought. That's a cool way to
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, you know, and obviously there's steps, right? I'm not telling clients to flush construction paper into their plumbing, but, or like, I'm not necessarily telling like a teen client to go and burn something. Maybe an adult client, if they have like a fireplace or, you know, I don't know. There's obviously some safety measures in that aspect, but,
Right.
you know,
But
even taking it into nature and like burying something. I mean,
well,
I'm
that's
kind of going on a tangent here with that, but kind
no,
of
but
gives you an idea.
it's true because then it is. I'm like, what do you do with the art when you're done? Is it something you keep in your journal? You're not going to necessarily put it out in the fridge.
Yeah.
Okay, I think I'm
Yeah, right. Okay, so then very last, right? Same thing. We're going to you can I guess you can just turn it over and you'll have your third panel on the far right, and that'll be your future panel.
future. Okay.
Right. So how do you want the future version of whatever came up to feel? What words do you want to embody? What feelings do you want to embody in the future? How do you want a future scenario to play out?
Yeah.
These are all prompting questions too, right? I might not be talking to a client throughout their process, but for sake of what
Yeah.
we're doing here today, right? We're gonna chat it out a little.
I need the prompts, so I'm
Yeah.
glad you're giving them to me.
Yeah, right.
And I have to say, just you as a clinician, you have such a soothing presence. Like as we're sitting here,
thank you.
I feel relaxed. I feel comfortable. And just so you guys know who are watching, like Laney and I, we were in the same cohort, but we didn't really like collaborate or anything. So this is really our first time having like one-on-one conversations that are in person, which I'm glad, because I feel like you guys as like who are looking for therapists, this is very much similar in the sense of like we're getting to know each other in session and we're learning, and I'm learning a new skill. Laney as a therapist, she's pretty nice. I have to say,
thank you.
I'm really enjoying it.
We're gonna have to swap sometime, right?
Yeah. I'm getting too cute, and this is gonna make a problem for me, because then the perfectionism is gonna come in, because it's not gonna be cute.
Right. If this was an actual therapy session, what I might do from here is I would ask the client to hold it up if they were comfortable, right? So that I could see it. I have also had clients, right, send me like a screenshot in the Zoom chat, and we look at it together if they don't want to, sit there and hold it up the whole time.
Hey guys, wanted to take a second really quickly. If you haven't already, make sure that you subscribe and hit that notification bell, the bell, so that you know every time that I upload something new. Let me know down below a type of therapy that you would like to see me try out. And that's it. Let's get back to it.
But whatever you want to do, Sierra, you can hold it up and show me, or just tell me what's going on. Okay. So this is pass.
This is the pass one. And it's like just words, but like a blue heart, just that's broken. A dream that looks like an egg, but it's really supposed to be a dream. And then it's like maybe, dream, not good enough, no. And then that's pretty much all that came out. For the
okay. So then we can go to present.
Present. This is where I messed up and my perfectionism tried to kick in, but it's just so present, and it's like in a bubble for a dream, like a current dream that I'm working on with a new endeavor for helping people. And then like new is the word, and then success can be more than growth in business and in life. It's also experiencing and believing in myself. And then there's like a small plant, which is like, this is part of a book I'm writing, but it's like be a symbolic thing. But yeah.
Okay. And so then the last, the future panel.
Future's a like root system, and rooted in love. And as a result, it's yielding like love for yourself, believing in yourself, and then stepping out to help others. And it's like a sun, and that's, I feel
nice.
Like works great, but
it looks nice and bright, right? Like naturey. Got some brighter colors. Okay, so now I want you to open it up and kind of have all three next to each other and just take that in and let me know what you notice about seeing them side by side, or any kind of differences that stand out to you.
Yeah, I think that obviously like there's a distinct difference between like the past and the future, and I would say also the present.
If you look at the whole thing, is there a certain part of the page that stands out to you the most?
For me, it's just this part for me is like the growth part, where it's like I still have not arrived in that, but hoping to grow. And that in my mind, it came out like a vine, like that was rooted. Feels hopeful in some way.
Yeah.
Whereas before it was very absolute, like no, not good enough. But there's possibility on this side. Yeah.
I mean, I can definitely notice, right? There's much more color, even in the present and the right. I hope I'm seeing it okay, like with my camera, that it looks like black and red on the left in the past, right? Which you can tell me your subjective experience of black and red, but often that's like I was saying before, like feelings of pain or anger or fear or we kind of associate those black and reds with kind of the more negative emotional experiences. Whereas if we move over, right, we have like a bright yellow, bright pink, bright green. Even in the present, there's that blue, the oranges, the reds, a little green as well, I'm seeing.
Yeah. Like a small.
What do you notice? What's that?
No, I said it's like a small sprout is what that was. Yeah, I think so too. I definitely felt like when I think about that past and even just my past self and those experiences, it very much felt like a very disconnected time, because I wasn't connected to myself. I was more connected to like everybody who was way older than me and men who were my bosses. So it felt like I had to listen to what they're saying because I wanted to grow and I wanted to be teachable. But in that, I lost myself because I was following what everybody else said I should be doing.
Right. And that word that you just said, disconnected, right? That could be kind of like that lack of color, just using the black, the thin marker, right? When we have a more vibrant image, like it gives a more connected feeling and like a more vibrant, vivacious experience when you look at it.
Yeah.
So this is not necessary at all, but is there like a title you would want to give this piece? And if not, it could be untitled. It's okay.
I think I'm very much in this, I think because of the book that I'm writing is very much about root systems and things. And so I feel like the rooted in love, or just being rooted, would be a good title.
And so if you want to, you could write that title on the back or somewhere and sign it, like a artistic signature.
Wow.
Put the date if you want, if it feels like the right thing to do to put the date, stamp of time.
I look at my date. There we go.
Yeah, the 12th, which is crazy.
I know, the month is going quick. Okay.
It is.
Root system is what it's called.
I love it. And then I know we were talking about this before, but right, like what would you want to do with this piece? Is it something that you want to store away somewhere to reflect on in the future? Is it something that you want to discard? Is it something that you might tuck into a journal or something like that?
Yeah, I think I'd tuck it into a journal because it is like a really great visual representation of like the journey that I work through on my root systems and belief systems and things. So I think so. Yeah. Wow. Look at you.
You could say it's my job.
What a professional. No, truly. Honestly, that was really enjoyable. And for somebody let me just say this, for those of you who are watching who are not artistic, I am not artistic, as you saw. And so just knowing, like, I still got a lot out of that once I got out of my own way of needing to try to be artistic when I'm not. And I think accepting that made it a little enjoyable for myself.
Yeah. And like I was saying before too, about like the different options for materials, there's so many things, right? It's collage. I feel like collage is always a good one. Although, like, I don't know if you're like me, I don't really have a lot of magazines anymore, but like, right? If it's something that if it's something that you're interested in, you could do that. I'm just like looking around my room right now at like, all the different odds and ends I have. I could put something together, like even, right, like making a statue or sculpture with things you have. So like I have these crystals at my desk, like you could kind of use them in a way. You could use things around you. It doesn't have to be necessarily like a drawing all the time. And another way to do that too is like, you could have very easily just taken a color and filled in one part of it with one color, filled in the next part of it with another color, and that would have still been, part of your process and perfectly valid to do as well.
Being really open to express yourself in however.
Yeah. I was just gonna say something else, but I forgot, so I'll throw it back to you.
Yeah.
If I remember it all, I'll let you know.
So as far as if somebody was looking to get into art therapy, the same way with like EMDR, like you want somebody who's like certified, is there something that you should be looking for if they're not able to, if they don't live in New York, which we're going to get to how you can, Laney specifically, if you live in the New York area, absolutely hit her up and we'll talk a little bit about that after. But I do want to also help anybody who doesn't live in New York that may want to find out what's the best way to do this.
Yeah, so really important. Thank you so much for asking that and letting me answer this question. Art therapists are master's level clinicians. In the state of New York and many other states, not all 50 states, but in the state of New York, it is a license. So I am a licensed creative arts therapist. And side note, there are other types of creative arts therapists. There's music therapy, dance therapy, drama therapy, and I can touch on that after this too. But if you're looking for specifically an art therapist, I would recommend, if you're in New York or another state, seeing if there's a license, and then you can look, for that either on your kind of typical like Psychology Today type stuff. But otherwise, there's a national board. It's the American Art Therapy Association. You can certainly search for art therapists through that. I think you can literally just go to arttherapy.org and find a therapist through that. But if you're in a state that doesn't have a license, definitely kind of make sure that someone is not misrepresenting themselves, right? There is a lot, like I said, it's a master's level training. It's not just, and no shade at all. Like, I know I've talked to tons of clinicians that are like, oh yeah, I love when like I have my clients use art in session. That's great. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that you're an art therapist and that you're doing art therapy. Similarly, like coloring in a coloring book is not art therapy. It's a therapeutic process, just as you would say like, doing bilateral stimulation to myself. That's not EMDR. Doing EMDR is with a therapist in a contained space within a therapeutic relationship. So that is something, to be mindful of. So yeah, arttherapy.org. Look and see if your state has that license. I know New Jersey has one, Oregon has one, New Mexico has one. California, they don't have one, but they're all protected. I think they're, just look that up. And the credential for that national is ATR, so Registered Art Therapist.
Because there is another type of art therapy, which is like it's an acronym. That can be confusing for people.
Right. ART. Yeah. I don't know much about that, but I'm talking about the art materials type of art therapy here.
So just being able to make that distinction for people that
Yeah. And I know I just mentioned, but if you're not an art person, and even though I just gave a whole spiel, a little bit ago about how you don't have to, use art materials to do art therapy, there is also music therapy, where similarly, like you would use music making in a session, music listening in a session. There's dance therapy, dance movement therapy, which is using movement as a therapeutic tool. And then there's drama therapy, right? Using drama, like acting, interacting, things like that in a session.
Your practice. Tell us, for anybody who does live in the New York state or within the city, wherever in New York, if that's your address, how can they connect with you if they want to start therapy?
Sure. So a easy way to get in contact with me, I would say, would be my Instagram, which is at Alchemy Creative Arts Therapy. And then my website, same thing, www.alchemycreativeartstherapy.com. I have all my info on there. Do lots of posting. I'm pretty active on Instagram. I have a couple art therapy posts on there that need to bring back into the mix, right? Because when we have like art therapy and EMDR and like different topics that we work with, right? But Yeah, and you have all my contact information like in my link in bio on my Instagram, and then on my website, of course, I have a contact page with email, phone number, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And usually the process would be like setting up a consultation call, seeing if it's a good fit, connecting in that way, and then scheduling ongoing therapy from there.
Awesome. I'm excited because I'll go ahead and for those of you who are wanting to connect with Laney specifically for some therapy, whether it's EMDR or art therapy, I will have her information in the description box. So make sure to check that out. But I just am excited for where you're going. I think if you're not following her on Instagram, you are losing out. Her content is really great. Not only do you
Thank
learn,
you.
but it's also engaging and entertaining. So it's really been enjoyable to come alongside and even just be in the cohort together and now do this.
Yeah.
It's just been so much fun. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was fun. We'll have to keep in touch for sure.
Absolutely. Well,
Yeah.
again, if you want to connect with Laney, information down below. Thanks again for joining us today, friends. And if you enjoyed today's podcast, be sure to do all the podcasty things. Give us a like, share, and follow. That way you can stay up to date and find us right back here with more from Working Through It. Working Through It is a storytime podcast and is not intended for mental health services or advice. If you or someone you know is in emotional distress, contact 988 via text or call to be connected to your local crisis center.